Dune is a movie full of loose ends. On screen, the film is titled Dune Part 1, and it covers a little less than half of the story of the book that it's based on. What's left hanging when the credits roll? These are the biggest unanswered questions in Dune. Around the film's extravagant midway point, when the Harkonnens have laid slaughter to the House Atreides with a dual-pronged attack and help from the Emperor's warrior force, the Sardaukar, the final fate of several characters remains left open. Duncan Idaho, Paul's trainer and friend, survives the battle and makes it out alive to help Paul and Lady Jessica make it to safety. But what about the rest of House Atreides' high-ranking men? There are two prominent figures we never see in the aftermath of all that carnage. Gurney Halleck, the weapons master, and Thufir Hawat, the mentat, or advisor to Duke Leto Atreides. Those familiar with the source material know both men survive, but with differing paths from this particular catastrophe. Gurney survives the battle and becomes a smuggler, disillusioned by what has transpired and mistakenly thinking Lady Jessica was in some way responsible for Duke Leto's death. But Thufir is kept on by the Harkonnens to replace the recently deceased Piter de Vries as their new mentat, a position he uses to undermine the regime from within. But that's assuming that the filmmakers behind the new Dune movie plan to keep things as close to the novel as possible in a potential sequel.
There's a crusade coming.
In Dune Part 1, Dr. Liet Kynes is portrayed by actress Sharon Duncan Brewster in one of the film's more affecting performances. Though the character is canonically male in the source material, this iteration is not drastically different in practice. Introduced as an objective observer of the regime change between the Harkonnens and House Atreides, it becomes clear that while Dr. Kynes is loyal to neither opposing force, she is also not exactly loyal to the Emperor, instead considering herself a Fremen first and foremost. Dune 2021 portrays Dr. Kynes as an impartial emissary of the Emperor whose heart belongs to the native people of Arrakis, who worship Shai Hulud and who has a murky, unexplored past with a Fremen lover who died. But one key element missing from this film is that Dr. Kynes has a child, Shani, a Fremen played by Zendaya. Shani doesn't appear on screen until the film's final act, only showing up throughout Paul's visions of the future. Dr. Kynes seemingly meets her fate by being swallowed up by the great sandworm before the film's last act, so we never see any interaction between the two characters. It remains to be seen if a Part 2 will follow up with this information, or perhaps even delve into Dr. Kynes' origins as a half-Fremen as outlined in Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson's Prelude to Dune. In this movie, maybe they're related and maybe they're not.
How can the Emperor take everything we've built and give it to that Duke?
One side effect of cutting the book's plot in half, one of the key figures in the Dune mythology, the character who sets everything into motion, is completely absent from Dune Part 1. The Padishah Emperor, Shaddam IV, previously played on screen by Jose Ferrer in David Lynch's 1984 version, is nowhere to be found, only alluded to as a catalyst for replacing the Harkonnens on Arrakis with House Atreides. Likewise, his daughter Princess Irulan, also a key figure in the plot, has yet to be seen either. It makes sense to not bother casting actors for parts that won't have much dialogue until a potential sequel. But in sidelining the Emperor, the motivations for his plot against Duke Leto are left harder to parse than they would otherwise be. Moviegoers will just have to wait for Part 2 to find out exactly what the Emperor is thinking with all of this. In one of the film's most touching sequences, not long before House Atreides suffers such heavy casualties, Duke Leto can feel the walls closing around him and he makes a heartbreaking confession to Lady Jessica. While she consoles him over the growing fears this move to Arrakis has been little more than a trap, he tells her how much he regrets not marrying her. Lady Jessica was a concubine and a sister of the Bene Gesserit, so her siring a son with Leto was unconventional, but he allowed her to raise their son and teach him the weirding way. Knowing that in all likelihood he's not long for this world, he asks her and the Bene Gesserit to protect his son. While it isn't as essential to the plot as some of the other unanswered questions, Leto and Jessica leave the viewer wanting more of their history together to know what kept Duke Leto from making an honest woman out of Lady Jessica. It's going to be pretty disappointing if this adaptation doesn't continue with the big screen Dune Part 2. When this first movie was greenlit, that was far from a guarantee, but the people behind the movie seem confident in the likelihood of a sequel that finishes the story. And that's just regarding the first book. Frank Herbert's original source material takes this saga even further into the future with several sequels, including the books Dune Messiah and Children of Dune. Director Denis Villeneuve is on record as saying his plan isn't just an adaptation of the original book split in two, but rather a trilogy of films that will culminate in a third chapter with Dune Messiah serving as its own standalone film to conclude Paul Atreides' story. We also still have Dune the Sisterhood, a prequel series about the origins of the Bene Gesserit being developed and waiting in the wings. A lot is riding on this film's financial success. Above all else, the spice must flow.
This is only the beginning.
Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more Looper videos about your favorite movies and TV shows are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.